All right, good evening, everyone, and welcome to Tucker Carlson Tonight. That's the sign over there. You'll see in a second. I'm Brian Kilmeade. I'll be filling in for Tucker. Meanwhile, it's been more than a year since Hillary Clinton's 2016 defeat, but the excuses just keep on coming. Clinton appeared on its radio show today to talk about her book, What Happened. I know. She's on a book tour. I had no idea. And she had a whole array of explanations for her loss. But this time, she put the blame on a new person, President Obama.
When you run to succeed a two-term president of your own party, you have a historical headwind blowing against you. It is a challenge. If you are both the candidate defending a lot of the areas of agreement, but also putting forth an agenda for change, which is what I tried to do, it is often difficult to get the second part of that message through.
Right, because you didn't say anything different from President Obama, so how do you run on the word change? Now, today wasn't the first time Clinton pointed fingers. If you had an email for every excuse she had, you could fill an entire private server.
The use of my email account was turned into, the biggest scandal since Lord knows when. They covered it like it was Pearl Harbor. If you look at Facebook, the vast majority of the news items posted were fake. There's all these stories about, guys over in Macedonia who are running these fake news sites. I inherit nothing from the Democratic Party. Comey was more than happy to talk about my emails, but he wouldn't talk about investigation of the Russians. I also think I was the victim of a very broad assumption I was going to win.
I did not know she was a judge on The Voice. I don't know if that chair turns. Meanwhile, Clinton used today's appearance to discuss more than just her defeat. She also said America has a large number of white supremacists who have made common cause with the president.
I think there has proven to be more white supremacists and white nationalists than I wish there were in our country, as we saw tragically in Charlottesville and other places. And they have made common cause with the president's agenda out of their own mouth, that he is someone that they are counting on to promote it.
Well, Clinton also expressed doubts about whether she can ever possibly be friendly towards President Trump like she was in the past.
I said we all need to give him a chance, and we all need to support our president. We have one president at a time, and I've been very disappointed in the way that he has conducted himself.
After this is all done, do you see becoming friendly with him again?
I don't know the answer to that question, Hugh.
I do. I'm going to go with no. Dan Bongino is a former Secret Service agent and an NYPD officer, and may I add, editorialized, a very nice man. Robin Biro is a former Obama campaign regional director, and they both join us now. Robin, the problem was President Obama. President Obama replacing a third-term popular president who got over 50% when he left. That is very hard when you run as an agent of change. Do you buy that?
I can't ignore that these good things do go in waves. I mean, it happened with George W. Bush. After 8 years of George W. Bush, I thought we were destined for a change, and I thought that she had quite the road ahead of her with trying to paint herself differently than President Obama, and really she did not do a very good job of that. She did the best I think that she could, but her campaign still, I still insist to this day that it lacked soul. I had the privilege of meeting her several times face to face. She was always warm and ingratiating, but once you got her in front of a camera, it just fell flat, and she never seemed to really resonate with the people, and it just was lacking that soul. She failed to tap into that wave of populism and the anger, and Donald Trump did capture that, and so did Bernie Sanders.
Right. Bernie was authentic. I would say George Bush was authentic, and I think President Obama was charismatic. Even one-on-one interviews, Dan, she didn't seem to resonate. But the problem fundamentally, I think, you tell me if I'm wrong, is if you're going to run as agent of change, you have to say something different from the person that you're changing from. She ran the same thing that President Obama ran on. She never said he was wrong here, he was wrong there, he was wrong there, and I'll be different here, right?
Well, yes, Brian. That's because she sat in front of focus groups and changed her position by the day. You know, she'd lick her finger and see where the wind was blowing. You know, Robin said he had the privilege of meeting her. Well, I had the privilege of working with and for her as a Secret Service agent. My takeaway was the exact opposite. I found Mrs. Clinton to be the most deceptive human being, manipulative political person in a position of power I'd ever met in my entire life. It wasn't so much that she was a liar. It was that she did it and she deceived and manipulated with such ease. This, you know, I spoke out against her, and believe me, this was not something I took lightly. I never attacked President Obama personally, and never would. I disagreed with his politics, but he was very genuine and nice to me personally. Mrs. Clinton is a fraud. If the people out there knew the Mrs. Clinton I knew, they would have a far different take. And the fact that she's trying to upend an American election where President Trump was elected, you may not have liked it, but that she's trying to upend it with this nonsense on this What Happened tour is a disgrace. It's a disgrace to herself and the American people that picked someone other than her.
Robin, I'll add to this. I read Donna Brazil's book. I found it fascinating, cover to cover. She says that no doubt about it, they took the African-American vote for granted. There didn't seem to be any push for any local radio. There was no push to go with the yard signs and the person-to-person interaction. It was all about analytics, about a bunch of 30-something-years-olds who thought they knew it all.
You know, and I'm personal friends with Robbie Mook, and I worked with him in South Carolina on the primary on this campaign. And the entire first section of the book, What Happened, does dedicate to the mistakes of the campaign, her own personal mistakes that she does own up to. Where you're exactly right, they got too much into the weeds, into the analytics. They surpassed the flyover states, the Middle America votes. We took those for granted. There were a lot of mistakes. Granted, the book is a complete assessment of everything that factored into this, which there was a lot that factored into it. But, you know, I think that she does take credit for her mistakes. But in the end, the message was basically that she was embarrassed. She felt like she let her supporters down. That's why she stepped away from the public eye for quite a while and is just now making this foray to sell books. But I want to point something out, Brian. I just hope that the point of selling these books is not to try and push Chelsea Clinton to run. Please don't do it.
I know. Dan, do you believe that the Democratic Party is turning the page when you see Kirsten Gillibrand stepping up and talking about her husband, and when you see others not really running to Hillary's side? She's selling books, got Book of the Year by some club, but I don't think she's winning over people, Dan. I don't see conversion. I don't see any conversion here.
You know, Brian, I've lost elections. I lost a tough one in Maryland. And you know what? You move on. Nobody likes a sore loser. Everybody hates sour grapes. I lost an election that they called the race 3 days later, and I'll never forget someone calling me and saying, move on. Move on. Don't bother with these lawsuits. Just do it. And that's what we did. Please, you know, listen, I know Democrats aren't going to take any advice from me. I'm a conservative Republican. But she is not the hill to die on, the Clintons. Let her go. It is time to throw them overboard here. They are not genuine people. I can make the case to you strongly, having been around them and knowing them far differently than others, maybe including Robin, I'm not sure, that they have been the most destructive force in American politics in the last 50 years. Nobody close to them. They have absolutely decimated Americans' faith in government by everything they've done. It's really a shame, and it's time for the Democrats to unmoor themselves from the Clintons.
And I would say a couple of things. Al Gore, I've never been more in awe of him. He had his heart broken with that election, no doubt about it. He won away. I thought that John McCain said I blew it. He kids about it right away. Bob Dole won people over the day after the election. He goes on Letterman, and people had a warm feeling for him then. It's the way you lose, not if you lose, that wins people over. And Bush 41's another great example of that. People thought he was a failed president, not in retrospect. Thanks so much, guys. Rob and Dan, great work.
Thank you.
And have a great Thanksgiving. But we're not done. Newly filed court documents reveal that Fusion GPS, the company behind the infamous Trump dossier, made payments to at least 3 reporters in 2016 and 2017. Todd Shepard is an investigative reporter at the Washington Examiner. Thor Halvorsen is the CEO of Human Rights Foundation, is directly linked with GPS, and he'll tell you about it in a second. First, to right now, to the story that broke in the Washington Examiner. 3 reporters say, and who wrote things against Donald Trump on the payroll from GPS. What does this mean to you?
Well, Brian, first of all, the documents that we looked at, it shows that these journalists were paid in a contract manner. So I can't necessarily say that they were on the payroll. As to whether or not the stories they've written about Donald Trump, were they negative, what we really know is that they've been writing about Russia-related activities, and they've been writing about the House Intelligence Committee. But it's this last part that really concerns the investigators and the attorneys for the House Intelligence Committee, especially, how much did they use their influence and their leverage with other journalists in this town to plant stories about the dossier, supposedly. And again, as you mentioned, some of those payments began, let's say, back in June of last year. So that would be about the time that the court documents also reveal that they were sending Christopher Steele, the British spy who assembled the dossier, that they were sending him out to pitch the dossier to media companies all in D.C. and up in New York City.
Thor, what does this mean to you? You know Fusion GPS. They did some work with you, I should say.
Well, yeah. Important clarification. Fusion GPS was hired to smear me and to smear a group of us who were whistleblowing about a Venezuelan corruption case. A group of criminals in Venezuela hired Fusion GPS so that they would then smear us. They created a dossier smearing us. They did one on me personally, smearing me. They took that dossier to the Wall Street Journal. It did not work. The reporters there would not bite. Ultimately, they found an out-of-work reporter, Ken Silverstein, in Washington, D.C., and he took their money and then took what was in that dossier and published a fake news story. What Fusion GPS does is create fake news. They get paid to smear people. And the fact that the House investigators have actually found these 3 journalists have been paid, they should unredact that. And I should note that just because it's in their banking records doesn't mean that there's not a whole bunch of other journalists that didn't get paid in cash. I have no doubt that they've also paid journalists in cash. It's what Fusion GPS does. And a lot of journalists don't want that on the record, so they want it in cash. This is a massive scandal, and the mainstream media knows that there are negative repercussions. And so this is why this must all come out. This must all be unredacted. There should be more and more information about who's getting paid. What are they getting paid for?
Right. Thor, I can tell you're fired up. Todd, this is part of the negotiations, wasn't it? Before GPS came to the table to speak to the House Intelligence Committee, they were so reluctant to come out. Maybe this was part of the negotiation. I will admit there are reporters, but I will not tell you their names. And that, to me, is not something the Intelligence Committee should have the right to do. We need to know.
Well, the House Intelligence Committee, from these documents, again, it looks like they intend to fight this to the last second. Now, I asked Josh Levy, who is an attorney for Fusion, about the payments made to the journalists. They said, look, we never pay a journalist to actually do a story, but we do pay journalists to do some contract investigating, and it never really ends up, they never write on the stories in which they investigate. But I think Mr. Halverson alludes to some very serious issues here about conflicts of interest. Look, conflicts of interest don't have to be disqualifying for a journalist. But if you're a journalist and you worked for Fusion on, let's say, some entirely separate project, and then you're reporting on the House Intelligence Committee in September of this year, in October of this year, when it's entirely about Fusion GPS, you owe it to your media-consuming public at the bottom to have a disclaimer that says, I've made money from Fusion GPS in the past.
Right. And Thor, unfortunately, we're going to have to leave it there. We do have some breaking news to go over, but thanks so much. Fusion GPS, we have to find out a lot more about that. We're going to realize the Russians are loving this because they played both sides effectively, creating confusion and distrust in America. Guys, thanks. Have a great Thanksgiving. Thank you. Here we go. A Fox News alert. This just crossing. 2 new accusers have come forward with allegations against Minnesota Senator Al Franken. The 2 women spoke anonymously to Huffington Post separately. They don't know each other. They say that Franken groped her while one says Franken groped her while posing for a photo in 2007 at an event in Minnesota, a women's political caucus. The other says Franken grabbed her buttocks in 2008 at a fundraiser, then suggested a bathroom rendezvous. Senator Franken responded to these allegations by saying this, quote, "It's difficult to respond to 2 anonymous accusers, and I don't remember those events." Fox will continue to follow this story because, ladies and gentlemen, it is not going away. Meanwhile, straight ahead, they've been searching in Russia, but they should have checked Philadelphia first. Up next, details on a real election scandal and a fix. Plus, we'll show you the election movie-like scene of a North Korean defector escaping the country for South Korea. Does he make it? right, Donna Brazile may have bashed Hillary Clinton in her new book From Cover to Cover, but she allied with the former presidential candidate on one thing, believing last year's election was rigged. Here's what Brazile had to say yesterday.
My personal view is that it was not a legitimate election.
So it doesn't count?
Chris, remember, I am the campaign manager of Al Gore in 2000. And where, as you well know, the Supreme Court decided. This election will always have an asterisk by.
Really? The whole book is about how Hillary Clinton blew it. Well, Brazile is right in one way. There does seem to have been a rigged election recently, but instead of Donald Trump, it involves a Democratic Congressman, Bob Brady. He's under investigation right now by the FBI for allegedly, get this, paying a political opponent not to run against him. Ethan Bierman and Dana Lash join us right now. They're both on the radio and extraordinary at that. Dana, for you, this is unbelievable. They're saying that he paid his opponent $90,000 not to run. Maybe he didn't do it, but his campaign did, and now the FBI is looking into it.
Yeah. Well, he's implicated in this, and Brian, good to be with you. Happy Thanksgiving to you and everybody out there.
Okay,
he's definitely implicated in this, and then as well as Jimmy Moore, who is the other individual who is challenging Brady for this seat. He's alleged to have falsified some of the accounts to the FBI, which you never lie to the FBI. That's one of the most common charges that they bust some of these politicians and other individuals on, is lying to the FBI. You don't do that, but he did, and that seems to be kind of par for the course. If you can't win, then you're going to have to buy your way, or you're going to have to steal. And we did see that in the Democrat primary with certain caucuses and primaries and superdelegates, Brian. So this, I mean, I'm not surprised, but I mean, $90,000 to pay someone to not challenge you. And where's the left on this as well? Because it seems like Moore was disenfranchised of an opportunity to challenge an establishment guy.
Right, Ethan, I mean, we don't want another country infiltrating into our election. We got that. We don't want a party deciding what the candidate. We got that. But what about a candidate paying another one? This is just one election, but do you worry about a trend? Do you think this is an anomaly?
I do see this as an anomaly, but this is horrible. I mean, there's no defending this activity whatsoever. He should be absolutely held to account, and if he's found guilty in a court of law, should pay the fullest price that our law allows. But however, that was the 2012 election. You know, what Donna Brazile was talking about was the 2016 election. And what we're all forgetting about this while we're talking about the Democrat in Philadelphia, we have the former Republican chair of the Colorado Republican Party who is under indictment as well for voter fraud. So there's a Republican here. But we really, Brian, I can't say this enough, and by the way, happy Thanksgiving to you both as well. Can't say this enough. We can't take our eye off the ball. Russia has been intentionally coordinated attacking us on the internet, our infrastructure, our voting systems. We can never forget that. I don't care if you're Democrat or Republican, that government is unfriendly to us. So let's not just make this into a Democrat and Republican debate. We have to keep our eye on who the actual enemy is here.
Dana, I'm sure you agree with that, and we don't want to just focus on this one Pennsylvania election,
Yes.
but we should. If we could possibly pull politics out of this and focus on what Russia did, because we have to put a stop to this, because if Russia can do it, China can do it. My goodness, North Korea could do it.
You're absolutely right, and I'm wholeheartedly against that. I mean, and that's one of the things that we know, that Russia wanted to get involved in our elections. We know that they wanted to have some sort of influence. So far, the DOJ and FBI have not verified anything that was in that dossier that's been going around, that they've had an entire year to look at and verify. And this is why, Brian, I'm so against anybody for political gain conspiring with the Kremlin through a firm and substantiating a FISA warrant on a private citizen based on nothing more than Kremlin gossip. And that's entirely why that I have taken a very strong vocal stand, as well as you and so many other individuals. And you're right, it shouldn't be about party, which is why all Democrats and Republicans alike should come together at the Thanksgiving table in a moment of unity, Brian, and say that was bad what Fusion GPS did.
Right, but I thought I was told by experts not to bring up politics. But back to politics, because we're on television. Ethan, do you believe that this election needs an asterisk, like Donna Brazile just came up with Chris Matthews and said?
I don't know that we need to go that far, but I want to add to something that Dana was just saying there. We know how bad the Russian hacking is. The Fusion GPS, that's not hacking. That is political pay. That's money going under the table to somebody who maybe is dirty. We don't know all the details of that. But the hacking is legitimate. The hacking is concentrated and concerted attacks on our infrastructure.
Ethan,
don't forget,
Ethan,
in
what
2011,
you're saying is correct, but I want to.
Which is why I wanted the DNC to let the FBI investigate, and they refused to do that, which I found incredibly troubling.
I think
feel very much against Russian involvement.
Get your head around this.
They don't need the server.
Right. Get your head around this for a second. You know that the Facebook ads and things, and you believe that they hacked into the election for Donald Trump. Do you also believe that possibly Fusion GPS lured the Clinton camp through them into Russia because they promised that they knew things about Donald Trump that would blow up his campaign? Isn't that virtually the same thing, if that indeed was the case, which we're about to find out, I believe?
Well, I don't see that as the same thing. First of all, what we seem to be missing in the conversation about Fusion GPS is the main person there is from one of our closest allies, Britain, and the MI6 spy agency. So
he's a free agent. He's not representing the British government.
A free agent now, but has had a great track record before this dossier. Don't forget that we had actionable intelligence from him in previous dossiers. So this isn't all bad. But
it's not been verified.
I don't disagree that. Well, the previous stories that happened, some of them have actually. But the deal here is
no,
with Fusion
actually they
GPS,
haven't.
If there is
the
something
DOJ
nefarious,
and FBI have not verified those.
Okay, well, we can debate that separately, but if there is something dirty that happened with Fusion GPS, I've always supported getting to the truth and holding people accountable. And if that is the case, let's find out and hold people accountable.
All we know is that Paul Manafort can't leave the house. That's all we found out in a year. Dana,
except for tomorrow.
Ethan, thanks so much. All right, coming up straight ahead, the president is picking another fight with the NFL. What's got him mad this time? We will tell you when we return. The league is considering keeping teams off the field during the anthem now. That the plan is a powerful critic to not having the team show up for the national anthem, having the sidelines totally empty, and that is President Trump. Pretty powerful guy. He tweeted this out this morning. The NFL is thinking about a new idea, keeping teams in the locker room during the national anthem next season. That's almost as bad as kneeling. When will the highly paid commissioner finally get tough and smart? The issue is killing your league. Speaking right to the NFL and to you. Britt McHenry is a former ESPN host. He contributes to The Federalist and joins us right now. Britt, first off, the NFL's idea, do you think the president's the only one who doesn't like it?
No, I don't like it. Not only is this disrespectful to the integrity of the American viewer who consumes the NFL, it's flat out ignorant to just think you can solve dissension by burying it. Roger Goodell has enabled the division in this country over a beloved sport because he hasn't done anything like other leagues. No suspensions, no new rules. He could have gotten out in front of it, yet he did nothing. Now, from a historical perspective, players weren't required to be on the field until 2009, until the league saw a marketing opportunity. They wanted extra cash. So the U.S. Department of Defense gave them $5.4 million from 2011 to 2014, and the National Guard gave them $6.7 million from 2013 to 2015. So bottom line, Brian, you don't accept money and then disrespect the armed services. You can't do both things at once, and I think you have to look at the timing here. The tweet from President Donald Trump could be tied to Jerry Jones, that unflattering video. Well, the unflattering video that came out about Jerry Jones last week when he threatened to sue the NFL, that was a 4-year-old video. So the timing was a little interesting from Roger Goodell and the NFL, if you think about it, given all the details that were leaked about this contract he now wants. That happens with Jerry Jones. Now this week, Jones says he's dropping a lawsuit against Goodell, but he has the most powerful man in the United States tweeting that he disagrees with Goodell's stance. So.
And Jerry Jones and the president agree a lot, and you sense there might be some coordination there between the two. And the video is doing something inappropriate that he wishes it didn't go away, but has been out there for a while. So the NFL wants a way out of this. However, they have the union, Britt. And I contend that if Roger Goodell says, hey, you know what? If you don't stand, you're going against my decree, you deal with the American people. He is really doing it to save himself. I think in a way, do you think he's taking a bullet for the union who will not agree to stand in the middle of the season?
At this point, it's so late, it would appear that way. We're getting into the last portion of the season, and this could have been done just like Adam Silver did with the NBA. There wasn't an official rule, but he came out in front of cameras, in front of the media, and said no one would be kneeling. And they have not had that issue. I think a lot of people don't necessarily disagree with players wanting to take a stand. There's other ways to do that. Fashion statements, community involvement, which we've seen a couple examples of. But doing it during the anthem is just creating division when a lot of people want to respect the military, and it's tied to that.
Marshawn Lynch sitting in Mexico City was the problem. There's only 11 players now taking a knee or sitting or staying in the locker room. Hopefully, gradually, they get rid of this. Nobody's happy about it. And I know a lot of people just aren't going to be watching on Sunday, bringing us to one game. For the first time, I believe, ever, the Redskins are hosting a Thursday game on Thanksgiving. And the problem is the name Redskins. They say it's disrespectful to Native Americans. But the polls say a different story, right?
Oh, absolutely. And let's look at facts and not feelings. In 2004, the Annenberg Public Policy Center conducted a poll of almost 800 Native Americans, 90% of whom had no issue with the name. And then the Washington Post conducted an interview just last year with similar results. 9 out of 10 Native Americans said it wasn't a big deal. So I think what we need to focus on is Thanksgiving. We should enjoy a good meal, shelter over our heads, and football. And we can't. And I think the more offensive thing here, Brian, is, sorry to say for you up in New York, is the Giants only having 2 wins this season. So that might be the offensive thing on the field. But everyone else needs to relax. And I've been around the Redskins. I've seen them give turkeys away every year, been out in the community. That's what they represent to the Washington, D.C. area, not anything offensive, in my opinion.
Well, hopefully people will follow your lead. Let's just enjoy some football and have some family, but don't talk about politics, or maybe you don't even bring up the Redskins, or don't bring up the Giants for tall people that might be insulted. Thanks a lot, Britt McHenry. Great seeing you.
Great seeing you, too.
All right, coming up straight ahead, we got incredible video of this defector escaping North Korea beneath a hail of bullets into South Korea. Put it this way, he gets hit with 5 bullets. All right, dramatic new video shows this perilous escape of a North Korean soldier defecting to South Korea. Watch this. The defector's driving a Jeep on the North Korean side when he breaks through a barrier and heads for the border while the soldiers scramble to get him on the north side. He eventually runs the car into a ditch and bolts over to the South Korean side while soldiers fire at him, but just barely getting there, getting shot at least 5 times, and they say about 40 shots rang out. Now, one of the North Korean soldiers chasing him briefly crosses the white line, marking the territories between North and South. He realizes he's in the South, and he panicked. That soldier takes a couple of steps into the South, retreated. This infrared camera shot you're about to see shows the defector just over a wall separating the 2 countries. 2 South Korean troops crawl over to him and grab him into safety because, you know, they don't know if they were going to get shot. Now, Harry Katsianis is the Director of Defense Studies at the Center for the National Interest and one of the few who probably understands why a North Korean soldier would risk everything to get to the South and what they were up against. How rare is what we just saw, Harry?
Brian, it's pretty rare. I mean, keep in mind that usually most people who are trying to defect from North Korea, you know, to freedom, essentially, go from to China, essentially. Yeah. So for somebody to actually cross the DMZ, I mean, think about it. This is an area that's usually riddled with mines. Hundreds of thousands of soldiers are in this area, tanks, heavy machine guns. This is an area of the world that you don't run across. So it's pretty astounding.
Yeah, here's the problem. I got these numbers from our brain room here. There's been 881 defections this year in 2017. Last year, 1418, so considerably down under this leader. The problem with going to China is if they catch you in China, they send you back to North Korea, correct? Right. If they catch you in South Korea, they leave you in South Korea. Right now, as this North Korean soldier struggles for life because he's full of infection. They found a lot of stuff in him, including some tapeworms that are about 12 inches long, to show how what he's been eating. He's down to 130 pounds. As he struggles for life, there's no fear of him going back to the north, right? The South will take him.
Right. I mean, Brian, I think of it this way. The North Korean-South Korean border is the modern-day equivalent of the Berlin Wall, essentially. This man was willing to risk his life to get to freedom. And we have to think of it also this way. His family, if he does have a family in North Korea, could also be in tremendous jeopardy. Sometimes as many as 3 generations of somebody who commits an act like this are going to pay a very high price. So we don't know what's going to happen to him, to his family. Also, the reports that of what he's going to go through, he's going to face deficits in terms of nerve damage. They almost had to amputate his arm. So what he was willing to sacrifice, it really shows you what an elite North Korean soldier was willing to do. He was willing to risk his life.
Harry, give me an idea of what's going on the inside of North Korea, because if the people are that unhappy, if they're suffering to that degree, is there a chance North Korea can solve this problem themselves, or is the government so insulated there's no chance for a civilian army to rise up?
The challenge here, Brian, is that the North Korean machine tightly controls the country. The people are starved. They don't even have enough food to eat. This North Korean soldier, there's been reports that he might have even been under malnutrition. And this is one of the top-line units that this soldier was probably involved in, to be that close to the border. So the North Koreans have a very tight control over the country and the populace. So if you're starving, it's very hard to sort of launch a mass revolt. Right. But the outside world is permeating North Korea. This apparent soldier wanted to see South Korean pop videos and pop music, so he was aware of the outside world. It could permeate into society and change that society.
Real quick, we know things have to change, and whoever was the president was going to have to deal with this, and this president's certainly going at it, and he's focused on it. He's not doing strategic patience. So we know that the 13 Chinese companies have now been sanctioned by our country for dealing with North Korea. We know the president talked for 90 minutes with Vladimir Putin, who reportedly is increasing trade in North Korea to supplement what the Chinese aren't. Do you sense there's something that could change? Is there hope on the eve of our Thanksgiving?
I think so. But the president has the right strategy here. It's keep the sanctions up. The North Korean economy is only worth $14 billion. It's the size of Vermont. If we keep the pressure on, we can critically damage that economy. We might not be able to stop their nuclear missile programs, but we could try to contain it as much as possible. The president's doing a good job on that.
Yeah, hopefully we'll use all the leverage to get the neighbors involved, because they do not like our military presence in the area. Harry, absolutely. And the only way for it to go away is for them to no longer be a threat. Harry Katsianis, thanks so much. Have a great Thanksgiving.
You too.
All right. Want to smile? Comedy in America. Well, is it in decline as the anti-Trump diatribes rage? What's the future of humor when even comedians would rather lecture you than entertain you? We're going to meet one comedian who admits the impossible, that he voted for Donald Trump. What was he thinking?
Are these tweets childish and embarrassing? They're also part of a disturbing pattern. Trump is clearly a thug and a wannabe dictator who lashes out at anyone who isn't sufficiently obedient.
In other toddler news, President Trump continues to feud publicly.
Mr. Trump, I know you're upset, but maybe now is not the time to be implying that someone's kid should go to jail for what their dad did.
So as you can see, late night comedy is now all one note, anti-Trump, more like lectures in comedy. It hasn't always been like that, too, and some are getting the sense that things are about to change. One of those people is comedian Michael Loftus. He's the executive producer of Kevin Can Wait on CBS, and he admits he voted for Trump.
I have a confession to make, and I voted for Donald Trump. I did. The whole election thing. People, you had to be embarrassed about it, right? Like, who are you gonna vote for? I don't know. It's tough. It's tough this year. I don't know. It's a tough call to make. I don't know what I'm gonna do. You're not gonna vote for that maniac? Oh no. And then you pull the curtain. You're like, click Trump. Okay, all right. That was crazy.
It's funny, but that's exactly what happened. Michael Loftus joins us now. Michael, I watch you on the LoftusParty.com, and I see that, and I'm wondering, you're very successful stand-up. You're respected by everybody. Did you pay a price for that position? Did you pay a price for that position?
You know what? I don't think I have yet. And people I'm starting to get scared because everybody's like, what you're doing's really brave. It's really brave. I'm like, I'm honestly, I'm just trying to tell jokes and I'm just being honest. Like, I don't want to live in a socialist America. I love this little crazy experiment we've got going on with the 50 states. So, yeah, you had to act like you didn't vote for Trump for the longest time. But now I'm like, what are you going to do? I voted for the guy. Here we go. In for a penny, in for a pound.
But, Michael, you're laughing, but that's exactly why the polls were all wrong. Because no one was honest. They said the Russians must have rigged this. This can't be true. We watched the crowd show up, but they said, well, those people aren't going to vote. But they actually did. But you also said something interesting to me yesterday. You said things are beginning to change. Why do you think things are beginning to change after 1 year in office?
First of all, none of the gloom and doom is coming true. I mean, if you watch like MSNBC, you watch some of these other news shows, and it's like every day is the end of the world. Okay. And they're just like, can you believe what I've never, ever in my life, this is, and these people who are anti-Trump, their lives have to be just so miserable. They have to think, this is it, this is it. Boy, I tell you what, come over to my side. I'm sleeping like a baby.
Right. Because, people are investing. They can afford the 2-drink minimum. A lot of times it was 1.5 drinks that you need to be successful as a comedian. People are, the numbers don't lie, too. Jobless claims are down. The market is soaring. And if you talk to anybody who's a contractor, they can't even, their voicemails are filled every day. Now, was President Trump solely responsible for that? No. But is the world collapsing? No. Did he just go on a 12-day trip and impress just about every world leader? Yes. Do we love all his tweets? No. So, Michael, do you sense that comedians are beginning to say this is not the way it used to be? Carlson used to be an equal opportunity offender. For a while, Letterman was too. Leno always used to go both sides.
Well, I think the television market's getting smaller, and Colbert and Kimmel and some of these guys, they're just like we're just going to go after the anti-Trump people and just keep them watching. They're not even they aren't really doing jokes anymore than just making like mean-spirited observations. And the guy who I feel sorry for is Fallon. Like Jimmy Fallon's just trying to do a fun show, and because he didn't go after Trump, people are like, "Whoa, aren't you on board with this guy?" And he's like, I'm sorry, I treated him like a human being. What was I thinking? That was wrong-headed of me.
He did apologize for saying just that. That's how bizarre he was. Yeah. I normalized him. Yes, he got the nomination and he became president. How dare I treat him with respect?
Yeah, and so now it's like it's painfully obvious. Usually what the comedians I like, the guys that I respect, they usually like defend the underdog. And when you've got, Kimmel and Colbert and everyone else going at Donald Trump, it's just not interesting and funny to watch somebody it's the same tired stuff. Oh, that orange-skinned guy, the oompa loompa, bang, bang, bang. It's I want to defend him.
Right.
That I have more fun as a performer.
All right, let me just let's help the American people now. We're about to have a Thanksgiving together with extended family and some strangers and some close friends. Would Michael Loftus recommend we talk politics at Thanksgiving and the new trend possibly of charging a cover charge for Thanksgiving because it's not cheap? Would you go for both? Number one, would you talk politics? Would you charge a cover?
I would not. Politics unless you go all in, unless you just decide to have a free-for-all. It's like, but say something bombastic, like Trump was the best president since FDR, and then just tape off your clothes and just roll around on the table. I mean, it's going to have to get weird. But yeah, stay away from politics on Turkey Day. Let's have a nice dinner, and let's not do the cover charge. Come on. That's mean-spirited.
And you're a happy guy. He's out in Los Angeles, coming back for Kevin Can Wait. LoftusParty.com to find out more. Michael, great job. Thanks so much. Have a great Thanksgiving.
Hey, you too, man.
Hey, the big holiday weekend means travel, football, and parades, but will the weather cooperate? The forecast next. All right. it's a Thanksgiving tradition. The Macy's Day Parade kicks off tomorrow morning, but tonight is the annual balloon inflation event. 17 giant balloons that will star in the parade are being blown up on the streets of New York City right now. So will the weather cooperate for the parade and allow Underdog to fly? Fox News chief meteorologist Rick Reichmuth, which means you must salute him when you see him in the hall, will tell us. Rick, what's going to happen?
So I used to live right underneath where they blow all those balloons up for years and years, and like 300,000 people go into the Upper West Side for that event, and you can't get anywhere. So you probably kind of want to avoid it. But I tell you what, weather right now is great. It's chilly out there, but not that bad. Tomorrow morning, it's going to be a different story. Really cold air. Cold air is going to kind of move on in. 37 degrees at the beginning of the parade, about 37 degrees at the end of the parade. If you are flying right now, still some delays in Newark. That is kind of always the case. But, Brian, that is the only spot in any airport across the USA today that has any kind of delays, which is really spectacular for the Wednesday. It's cold behind a system that's moving here towards the northeast, so feels like 32 here in New York, but 26 in Chicago, 13 in International Falls. Go throughout the evening. Don't expect to really see any more delays. Tomorrow, weather's looking great.
Gotcha.
Pacific Northwest, a little bit of rain, a little bit of mountain snow. Florida, kind of central Florida, a little bit of rain. That's it. And then we'll just go forward here to Sunday and show you what that travel day looks like. I mean, kind of the same story.
A lot of travel.
A lot of travel, but the weather's good.
Rick, we're going to watch you on Fox & Friends weekend, 6 to 10, or unless you want to get started up earlier. Thanks so much. Have a great Thanksgiving.
You too.
Meanwhile, that's it for tonight. Be sure to join Tucker every single night at 8 o'clock. He's counting on you. And I'll see you on Fox & Friends TV show and on the Brian Kilmeade radio show. Check out my book, Andrew Jackson, The Miracle of New Orleans. If you want to get it signed, go to briankilmeade.com. If I end early, don't worry, we have a wide shot, so we'll be able to handle that. We'll bring the music up really loud, and I'll look in the shadow. Meanwhile, that's it for us tonight, unless you have something else for me to do. Sean Hannity's show is about to get started. He wants me to tell you, and later he'll relay it, to have a happy Thanksgiving. Thanks so much. Stay safe, and most of all,